So sticking with two-sample testing, now we're going to look at proportions. So in this situation, we're dealing with industrial community and a rural community, and we're talking about the lung disease that they suffer. 150 people were from one sample, 100 people from the other. If you look down here, you want to take a second and write those formulas down, and we'll talk about what this one means, what the P bar means in 1 second. So go ahead and write those down, pause the video, and come back. Okay, now that you have that information, the first thing we need to do is we need to find P hat. So look at your information, think about how you find P hat 1 and P hat 2, pause the video, come back, we'll talk about them. So now we have our information here. We looked at our first sample, which was from the industrial community. We had a sample size of 150, 80 people suffered the illness. So now we found our P hat 1 value. Same way we did it before. I did the exact same thing for the rural community. The important thing, like we talked about before, make sure you make it clear which one is which. So my industrial community and my rural community. That way somebody can go back and check your work later, or you can interest it for yourself. So let's go ahead and set up the null and the alternative hypothesis. Think about how we did it for the mean. Go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back and talk about what this P bar means. So now we have our hypotheses, and because we're looking at just difference here, we know we're doing with a two-sample test. Keep in mind that all proportion tests, just like we talked about before, are always going to be z-test. So finding our critical value in a little bit is going to be exactly like you did for the large samples. So let's talk about what this P bar value is. P hat represents the percentage of people from the industrial community. P hat 2 represents the percentage from the rural community. P hat and P hat 1 and P hat 2 added together, if you look at those together, you're going to end up with a P bar value. So what this actually says is how many people overall were surveyed. Well, there was 150 people and 100 people, so there was 250 total people. Of those, 80 and 30, 110 had the illness. So we're looking for the percentage of people that overall had the illness. Go ahead and find the P bar value using that formula. Think about what we just talked about. Go back, plug it in to get your test statistic, find your critical value, and then come back when you're ready. So once we plug everything in here, and we take the bottom and we do the square root of that, you end up with a critical value of positive negative 1.96, two-sided test, 5% significance. We end up with a test statistic of 3.64. This is a pretty substantial test statistic. It falls all the way out here. So what does this mean? Reject, fail to reject. What does it mean about the situation? Come back when you're ready. So hopefully you agree that this is a reject the null hypothesis, which means this idea most likely, not necessarily, most likely is not true. So the data in this case does seem to give significant evidence that there is a difference between the industrial communities and the rural communities. Look at another example.